On NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of the hour. A federal immigration officer shoots and kills a man in Minneapolis, sparking new protests. State lawmakers identify him as 37-year-old, a U.S. citizen, and a nurse called Alex Pretti. The killing comes weeks after another U.S. citizen was shot by an immigration agent in the same city. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz calls federal accounts false and orders a state probe as Trump accuses local leaders of inciting unrest. Trump says the U.S. will impose a 100% tariff if Canada strikes a trade deal with China. The warning follows Canada's announced partnership with Beijing and rising tensions between Ottawa and Washington. Myanmar's military rulers opened the final phase of voting in a controversial election. Watchdogs say the poll will entrench junta's rule as a pro-military party eyes a landslide. Trump praises British soldiers as brave a day after his NATO comments spark outrage in Britain and Europe. London rejects his claim that European troops avoided frontline fighting in Afghanistan. Ukraine and Russia end 2 days of US brokered talks in Abu Dhabi without an agreement. Both sides say they remain open to more talks despite continued attacks on energy sites. Syria's military and Kurdish-led forces extend a ceasefire by 15 days. Damascus says the move supports a US operation to transfer ISIL prisoner. Italy recalls its ambassador and protests the bail release of a Swiss bar owner after a deadly fire. The blaze killed 40 people as owners face probes for negligent homicide and other offences. We start this hour in the United States, and immigration agents have shot and killed a U.S. citizen. His name was Alex Pretti in Minneapolis on Saturday. The 37-year-old, a nurse at the Veterans Affairs Hospital, was fatally shot during a federal immigration enforcement operation. Video footage of the incident circulating on social media shows Pretti struggling with agents before gunfire erupts, followed by the deployment of tear gas. The incident has sparked protests and strong condemnation from local leaders, but federal authorities have stated that Pretti was armed and resisted attempts to disarm him. Let's listen in to what a Border Patrol senior official said during a recent press briefing.
During this operation, an individual approached U.S. Border Patrol agents with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The agents attempted to disarm the individual, but he violently resisted. Fearing for his life and the lives and safety of fellow officers, a Border Patrol agent fired defensive shots. Medics on the scene immediately delivered medical aid to the subject, but the subject was pronounced dead at the scene.
However, local officials have questioned the federal account of events. This marks the second fatal shooting in Minneapolis this month as part of the immigration crackdown. The earlier incident involved the death of a woman, Renee Good, and at least 6 others have reportedly died in federal custody this month. Meanwhile, the U.S. president has criticized Minnesota's leaders in a recent post on his Truth Social, accusing them of inciting insurrection. Trump has also claimed that the state was involved in financial mismanagement and illegal activities, but experts say that this is without any evidence. Moreover, Trump has further defended the immigration agents, insisting they are essential for public safety. Meanwhile, the local protests have continued, with demonstrators demanding the complete withdrawal of federal agents. The federal investigation into the shooting is ongoing, with no clear answers yet. Joining us now to discuss this is Matthew Vadum. He's an author and journalist. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. Matthew, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, the second killing of an American citizen in Minnesota within the space of a month. There is conflicting accounts of this, many different camera angles of this situation. Given these, federal authorities claiming Pretti was armed and resisted versus this video analysis that a lot of people are putting forward, which suggests he may not have been a threat. What frameworks exist to assess the credibility of such competing narratives here?
Well, the federal government is going to investigate this, and they're going to find out if their officers violated the law or violated procedure, and they will analyze. I'm not an expert in forensics, studying the investigation of crime, but they're going to look at the videos. If there are body cam videos, they're going to look at those. They're going to interview the officers involved. They're going to interview witnesses. They're going to try to get as broad a perspective as they can before they come to conclusions. They have released some information already, which you alluded to, which is that the suspect, the man, Mr. Pretti, came armed to some kind of a protest, civil disobedience, or trying to interfere with immigration enforcement operations. He was armed. He had a pretty expensive, I think they go for about $2,000, a souped up Sig Sauer pistol, and he had extra magazines with him. Now, there's a dispute from watching the videos, and it seems everybody on social media has an opinion. I looked at them, and I'm not really sure what happened, apart from the fact that there was a physical altercation, and that Pretti came to this intending to confront immigration enforcement officers, and he was armed. Now, you're allowed to carry a weapon in the state of Minnesota, and apparently he had a carry permit, so there's nothing illegal about that. But it's a strange thing to go and try to use your body to interfere with federal immigration law enforcement while also being armed. It doesn't, I'm not saying Pretti necessarily deserved what happened to him, but it doesn't seem like prudent behavior. If you're going to go and practice techniques that you learned at an ice watch session, you probably should leave your gun at home when you do it.
Okay, Matthew, of course, this is the second incident within the space of a month, a second American citizen that's been killed. What does that say about the nature of the situation in Minnesota right now?
It says that there are a lot of radicals in Minnesota who don't believe that the federal government should be enforcing immigration law. That's what it means. Some of them think that ICE is being too heavy-handed, and this is, an arguable point of view.
Do you think ICE have been conducting themselves correctly?
That what?
You think they've been conducting themselves correctly in a proper fashion?
I think generally, yes. ICE and HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, and the Border Patrol that's been brought in have generally been conducting themselves properly and professionally. But when you have a massive operation underway to catch illegal aliens, which is what the officers were doing in Minneapolis when Mr. Pretti unfortunately ran into them, you are going to have you are going to have some mistakes made. There are likely to be some violent incidents.
Okay, Matthew, apologies for interrupting. What do you think of the? Of course, this is the second incident that has happened.
Yeah.
We've seen video footage of both incidents, both the incidents that have happened over the past month. They're both pretty contentious. It could be either way. Obviously, it's not clear. The events aren't clear of what happened in either of them. Both are up for debate. And so what does that say about the situation? Is it a trial by social media now? What is the current situation in the American conversation which is going on? Is this just driving both sides apart further?
Well, it is, and that's the nature of social media. Social media doesn't bring us together. It puts us at each other's throats. And these arguments about what happened with Pretti and what happened with Renee Good, that's the woman who was shot in her SUV a couple of weeks ago in Minneapolis. It's just going to fuel these controversies. I think that it's not going to get, I think it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. There is some talk that President Trump may invoke the Insurrection Act in Minneapolis, which he is allowed to do, especially since the Supreme Court now frowns upon him using the National Guard to assist in immigration enforcement operations. But they seem to say it was okay they seem to imply it was okay for him to use the Insurrection Act, which seems kind of odd to me, that they take away the less severe option and say the more severe option was okay, but that was what the recent rulings seemed to be saying. I think the situation's going to get worse before it gets better, and you better just strap yourself in.
Okay. Matthew Verdum, thank you very much. Do stay with us as we move on to our next story. And we move on to another development, and direct peace talks between Ukraine and Russia have taken place in Abu Dhabi. A senior US official called the meeting a big step, saying it showed real progress and willingness to move forward. Both delegations have now agreed to meet again, with the next round expected on February the 1st in the same place. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the US brokered talks were constructive and that a lot was discussed on ending the war. He agreed that Ukraine is ready to continue negotiations if there is readiness from all sides. Washington says bringing both parties to the table is itself a significant breakthrough. Joining us now to discuss this is David K. Johnston. He is an author and a journalist. He joins us live from New York. David, thank you very much for joining us. Pleasure to have you. Of course, these were the first trilateral talks within the past 4 years of the war between the United States, Ukraine, and Russia. We have seen no avail. However, it was the first round with another meeting scheduled on the 1st of next month. What does that say about how close we are to truly ending this war? Trump keeps up his rhetoric that things are 90% done. Zelensky says even that he has hope for an end to the war very soon. However, what does it say about the current diplomatic progress that the three are at least now getting in one room to discuss an end to the conflict?
Well, I think it's a good thing when you have direct talks, as we've seen here, between the parties. But are they going to go anywhere? Not unless certain things change. Russia insists that they must have turned over to them territory which the Russian army has been unable to take after 4 years. Why would the Ukrainians give up territory that they have defended with a lot of blood and treasure? Russia says absolutely no to the idea of creating what effectively would be a demilitarized zone with United Nations peacekeeping or European peacekeeping troops, something somewhat like what we see between North and South Korea. And the US plan is largely the Kremlin's plan. So I expect there are going to be more talks, but this is a war of attrition at this point. And I think it's very clear from the official statements of the Russian side that they believe that as time passes, they will be more successful. By the way, as these talks began, Russian missile strikes took out electricity for 1.2 million Ukrainians. That's not how you start serious peace talks, but if you are using talks as cover to continue a war of attrition, that kind of assault makes perfect sense.
Indeed, and David, of course, Zelensky said that these talks were indeed constructive. However, he has repeatedly used that term, or terms like it. Historically, how has that language translated into tangible outcomes when it comes to this war? Of course, the only ceasefires we've really seen are Easter ones that have lasted a couple of days, put forward by Vladimir Putin, which Zelensky has agreed to, and then there's been multiple ceasefire violations. So we haven't actually seen anything translate to real progress when it comes on the ground here. David, what are your thoughts on the language that's being used?
I think a key element of what's going on here is that the European leaders and Zelensky are trying to keep Trump on the ranch. They're trying to keep him from more openly advocating for the Kremlin. At the same time, the other European nations have not really been willing to step up. They've put more war material, more valuable war material and help in than America has to Ukraine, but they have been unwilling to step up their position. And we wouldn't be in this place, frankly, had Joe Biden in the fall of 2021, when the Russians began massing troops, drawn a red line and sent massive aid then. Instead, he took this mild, incremental, tit-for-tat approach, a very diplomatic sort of approach, even though we're talking about warfare, rather than a full-throated, vigorously funded defense of Ukrainian territory. And the Europeans have made it clear that they understand that if Ukraine is taken over by Russia, then Putin will move on and try to take over Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, other countries.
And what about Europeans at this table? Do you see now that there are being direct talks between Russia, Ukraine, and Washington, that the Europeans could be left out?
Absolutely, and that's another concern. But Zelensky, given his position, is absolutely going to agree to go to talks, no matter whether they're going forward with any success or not. And the Russians, I think, are going to continue to try to delay talks. I mean, why are they waiting until next week or the week after to resume talks? Why aren't they resuming talks today? They're all still in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah. David, do stay with us as we move on to our next story. We move back to the United States, and President Trump is threatening a major trade escalation with Canada. He says Ottawa will face a 100% tariff on all goods entering the US if it strikes a deal with China. Trump made the warning on social media, accusing Canada of becoming a drop-off port for Chinese goods. The White House has not clarified what deal Trump is referring to, but Canada insists no free trade agreement with China is being pursued. Prime Minister Mark Carney recently announced a strategic partnership with Beijing, resolving long-running tariff disputes. China will slash levies on Canadian canola oil, while Canada cuts tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. Canada says it is now working to diversify trade beyond the United States. David joins us once again. Of course, Mark Carney has become something of a global figure after his speech at the World Economic Forum, of course, and that, of course, followed a visit to Beijing. Do you think Donald Trump is serious about threatening 100% tariff on one of the United States' top trading partners? And what do you think he thought of Carney's actions recently when it came to Davos and his visit to Beijing?
Well, Donald had said in the past that Canada is an insignificant trading partner. It's the #1 trading partner of the United States. And I think we'll see another example of Taco. Trump always chickens out. He keeps announcing these horrendously high tariffs, and then he walks away from them. and he has no authority under the American Constitution to impose tariffs. That is solely and exclusively the power of Congress. There isn't even a bill advancing in Congress that would do these things Trump has been doing, and the U.S. Supreme Court is going to rule, presumably pretty soon, on the tariffs that Trump has been collecting. And by the way, everybody who's paying these tariffs is immediately filing for a refund to protect themselves, to get the money back. But what I do see here is enormous success by Donald Trump in alienating America's strongest allies. The most lapdog ally the U.S. has had since World War II is Australia. He's annoyed them. He's got the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, saying that Trump is rupturing the world order and Canada is no longer going to have the same close relationship. He's attacked the British and the Danes over their support during the war in Afghanistan, and the Danes lost per capita more soldiers than America did, the British roughly the same as the United States. And these claims, they weren't on the front line, etc., they're just craziness from Donald Trump. And think about this for a moment. Who is the leader of any country to tell another one, you will not have a trading deal with some other country unless I approve of it? The arrogance of that should really stick with people.
And what would be the implications for both the United States and Canadian consumers if a 100% tariff was indeed imposed on Canadian goods?
Well, it would be the end of large parts of the automobile, truck, and heavy equipment manufacturing industries in the Northeast U.S. and essentially Ontario and Canada. Half of Canadians live in Ontario. There are goods that from the moment the first template is used to strike a piece of metal until the device is completely built that go back and forth across the border between the U.S. and Canada 4, 5, 6 times. If you drive to Toronto from the U.S., you pass a massive Ford plant, gigantic Ford plant. Ontario is pretty close to making the same number of cars as Michigan, the central point of the American automobile industry, because there are more favorable economic conditions in Canada, principally that healthcare is not on the books of the companies, it's on the books of the government. And so this would be massive disruption. It would lead to massive layoffs in the United States, and hopefully would prompt the Supreme Court to be incredibly clear that Trump has no authority to do this. And if he wants to punish Canada, there are lots of other things he can do. He can, have every single truck coming across the border forced to empty its goods and have agents go through them. The Japanese did this to the United States in the 1980s. They would adopt rules that required something to be 1/8 of an inch off of the American standard manufacturing size, things like that. But mostly this is Trump demonstrating that he doesn't have a clue to what he should be doing and the impact of what he is doing. And in all of this, keep in mind, he wants to make sure there's a lot of chaos and focused attention so nobody pays attention to the Epstein files, 99% of which have yet to be released.
David K. Johnston, thank you very much. As always, it's a great pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for taking the time. We now move on, and authorities in Indonesia continue to search for at least 80 people missing after a landslide killed 10 in West Java province. Some bodies have been found, and the police have said that they are trying to identify the victims. Rescue operations have been hampered by difficult terrain, thick landslide material, and the heavy rainfall. Dozens of houses have been reported to have been buried by landslide debris and mud, causing severe damage to residential areas near the affected site. The local authorities have urged residents living near the affected area to remain alert and stay away from landslide-prone zones, citing the risk of secondary disasters due to unstable soil conditions. Let's in fact listen into what the rescue operations officers had to say.
Ini hari pertama kita melaksanakan evakuasi Jadi dari hasil laporan sampai sore tadi kita sudah melaksanakan evakuasi dengan tim SAR gabungan di lokasi longsor. Alhamdulillah di sore ini kita sudah mendapatkan 10 korban dalam kondisi meninggal dunia. Terus kami hentikan sementara di sore hari ini dan kami lanjutkan lagi besok pagi untuk proses evakuasi, kemudian menentukan titik-titik di mana lokasi-lokasi yang ada korban yang tertimbun longsor.
Now we move on, and NVIDIA CEO Jason Huang is in Shanghai as the US chip giant faces intense competition from local rivals and scrutiny from Chinese authorities. Huang's trip is to kick off annual celebrations with NVIDIA's Chinese employees. According to reports, he is expected to attend an NVIDIA party in Shanghai on Saturday before traveling to Beijing, Shenzhen, and then to Taiwan. Huang has visited China at least 3 times last year, and in July 2025 he met with Chinese Commerce Minister Wang Wentao. Meanwhile, NVIDIA is waiting for Beijing to decide whether to let the company sell its powerful H200 artificial intelligence chip to Chinese customers, a step already approved by the United States. Chinese authorities have stated that the H200 chip was not permitted to enter China. Well, that's all that we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.